Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 11 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today on the show, we'll be featuring an interview with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt Carlos Diaz, and he's the owner of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Destin in Destin, Florida. But before that, let's do a few things, starting with our jiu-jitsu quote. The art of jiu-jitsu is worth more in every way than all of our athletics combined. And this quote is from President Theodore Roosevelt, and he said that in 1905. So very cool that one of our former presidents was that tuned in and that big a fan of jiu-jitsu, even way back in the day. So awesome. Okay, a few episodes ago, I featured a little bit of a video from Stuart Cooper Films, and at that time I said just what a big fan I am of his work and the videos that he's done so far. Right now I'm going to play a clip which is a part of one of his videos called We Are Artists, and hope you enjoy it.
We are artists. Jiu-Jitsu is our form of expression, how we express ourselves, how we show who we are, and that's what I live for. And for me, the martial arts lifestyle has been the way of life since the very beginning. My father is a lifetime martial artist. He was inspired by Bruce Lee whenever he was a child. My father pursued martial arts his whole life, following Bruce Lee into the Jeet Kune Do. I grew up with that in my life. You know, JKD was like my my martial arts lifestyle growing up. That was already kind of like a mixed martial arts lifestyle because it was a blend of all sorts of martial arts. So I was boxing and Thai boxing and doing Kali, Eskrima, Wing Chun, Penjak Silat, like numerous martial arts my whole life. And I'm very fortunate that I had my father to, raise me that way and show me the martial arts lifestyle while I was still young. Then when he discovered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu through the JKD, he grasped onto that and I was very fortunate to be just a teenager and at a time where many people had no idea what jiu-jitsu was. Most of the world didn't know. To have my father really search for that and want, to learn the best martial arts that were out there and be able to have that, trickle down into me and still be young enough to be able to get that exposure and have my father's support was a huge changing factor in my life. And I fell in love with jiu-jitsu right away. The martial arts lifestyle, what I think it means to me is seeking perfection, knowing that you're never going to reach it, always wanting to improve, always wanting to learn, perfect your craft. We are artists, and jiu-jitsu is our form of expression, how we express ourselves, how we show who we are, It's our little fingerprint. No two styles, no two games are going to be the same, and it's how you mold and develop and create your style, your angles, your techniques, and what you get from other people, what you're inspired from, how you like to move, how you like to compete, how you want people to know you. I think it's just so pure. It's never ending. Martial arts can really bring everyone together, especially jiu-jitsu. You see it in academies all across the world. So many times I'm on my mat and I look back and I'm sitting against the wall and I just look on the mat, I look around and I see all these people together sharing their techniques and sharing their energies and having fun with each other. And then you realize, like, look, this is a high school kid, this is a businessman, this is a family man, people that are just all across the spectrum, people that would never cross paths with each other any other way. It's really amazing. I think you see that so much more with jiu-jitsu than other martial arts because of the connection that you make with people.
Okay, that's just a piece of the video. You can find the entire video on YouTube. I will post a link to that one. It's one you definitely want to see the whole thing. That was Rafael Lovato Jr. featured in that particular video, but Stuart has featured a lot of different high-level jiu-jitsu competitors and personalities in his videos. And right now, Stuart Cooper is kind of on a mission. He's trying to raise some money to continue to do the jiu-jitsu films that he's been doing. So I urge everybody to help support him. There's nobody out there doing this kind of stuff to the level he is, and it's very, very inspirational, motivational jiu-jitsu material. If you go to Indiegogo, and again, I will put a link on the website, but he has an Indiegogo project going on. It's a very long address, so if you just go to www.indiegogo.com and then just search for Stuart Cooper, it's probably the easiest way to do it, or just use the link I'm going to put on the website. But anyway, he's trying to raise $50,000 to be able to continue to bring some of the free jiu-jitsu content to viewers. Right now he's at 18,212, so he's reached 36% of his goal, and he has 15 days left. So again, I urge you to show your support, even if it's even if it's $1. Every dollar helps. So please consider it, and let's move on now and meet Carlos Diaz. Okay, my guest today is Carlos Diaz of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Destin in Destin, Florida. So welcome, Carlos.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm excited to have you on the show today. Carlos is from the Florida Panhandle in Destin, Florida, and the reason I think that's so cool is that's where I grew up as well. So I love that area, and it's also where the Gracie immersion camp from the Gracie Academy is held now. So really great area, and wanted to make a comment about the Gracie immersion camp. It's happening in June of this year, June 20th through 22nd, and one of the biggest highlights of last year's camp was, Carlos, whenever you received your black belt from the Gracie Academy, and it was really awesome to be there and to see that. It was a very cool and emotional time. So I know it's a year late, but congratulations. And what was that like, being able to get your black belt awarded at the camp?
Wow, amazing. Yes, black belts are one of those things that you kind of like, you kind of chase, but sometimes a little bit more than others. And I think in jiu-jitsu, why? Because it takes so long. You kind of tend to forget about it a little bit and say, it will come when it will come. So when it did come, it was kind of like, wow.
That's great, man. So you knew it was coming eventually, but you kind of just stopped focusing on when it's coming, and then it was a big surprise to get it then.
Yeah, it only took like 15 years or so, so you know.
Wow. Well, big congrats, man. That's really awesome. Awesome. So let's start, Carlos, by just finding out about your martial arts journey, what that looked like for you, how you got started, and how it got you where you are today.
Yes, let's see. I'm originally from Venezuela, and there boxing is pretty big. So every martial arts in general is kind of like very curious about it. Um, so I started there playing around, of course, with friends, family, and afterwards I went to high school in Barbados. And in Barbados, apart from learning English, I got really a lot into tennis competitively.
Mm.
And because of tennis, I got into martial arts. Our coach thought it was a great way to cross train, again, with all the Bruce Lee movies and stuff back in the day. Uh, it was a way to make us do push-ups, sit-ups, and all these things that, as tennis players, we didn't want to do. We just wanted to hit the ball.
All
Um,
right.
um, so there, it was really my first introduction to martial arts. Once I came to the U.S., of course, I kept on doing it as a way to be fit. I find it kind of boring just working in a traditional gym with really no purpose. So martial arts was a way to get into something that you're learning and you're working on your fitness at the same time. And got introduced to many different martial arts while in the U.S., of course, and fell in love with really full contact martial arts. Thai boxing and jiu-jitsu were the two that I really stuck with, and it's been an incredible journey. Especially the jiu-jitsu part of it.
What are some of the other arts that you did study along the way, Carlos?
I train in Kempo, Wing Chun, and Jeet Kune Do. So
Okay.
yes,
Nice.
those are the martial arts. Especially when I got into Atlanta, I lived in Atlanta for about 6.5 years, and there's an instructor there called Sifu Francis Fong who was teaching Wing Chun, Thai boxing, Jeet Kune Do concepts. And in there, I also got to meet what was my future instructor, Eddie Camden. So
Oh yeah.
he was Francis Fong, most experienced student. And then after a while, he opened up his own school and brought jiu-jitsu into the whole other martial arts that he was teaching. So that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu then.
Nice. Shout out to Eddie Camden.
Yes, for sure. He still teases me and submits me every time he sees me. So it's all good.
Now you said Francis Fong. Is he related to Augustine Fong? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
The reason I ask is I remember way back, having the Panther videos back in the '80s, and one of them I had was a Wing Chun video, and it was Augustine Fong, was a big master in Wing Chun. So I was just wondering about that.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure. I do know that right now, I mean, Sifu Fong has always been associated with Danny Nosanto for Jeet Kune Do, and
Hmm.
also Chai Shirishute for Thai boxing. And those guys
Okay.
today still do a train with the master seminar twice a year, where they
Wow.
all get together, and they also, I think, in the last couple of years, introduced Pedro Sauer, Professor Pedro
Ah,
Sauer, and put jiu-jitsu as part of the seminar, which is pretty interesting.
very
You know,
nice. Very nice. Now, when you got into the Thai boxing, who was that with in Atlanta or somewhere else?
that was in Atlanta. Started with Francis Fong, and of course, through with Eddie. Uh, so Sifu Eddie Camden was the one that kind of like took me in the later years, but I got introduced to Francis Fong, and I loved it then because it was my nature to be pretty aggressive. I was small but reasonably fast, and that kind of all blended into fast and furious, kicking, punching, the whole
Right.
deal. Except when you get into bigger, stronger opponents.
Right.
So
Right.
you kind of like stay away from those guys and say, okay, I stay in my world or my weight class. Um, so that's why I think I fell in love with jiu-jitsu because I knew in the back of my mind uh, there is a point of diminishing returns into striking arts. And me
Right.
being 5'8", dancing between, at that time 140, today 160. Wow, I couldn't even imagine like, striking with some of my current students. I got students that are over 300 pounds now.
Wow.
But in jiu-jitsu, I can roll with them all day.
Yeah, you can level the playing field, right?
For sure.
And I think you're certainly not alone with that. There's a lot of us that were drawn to jiu-jitsu for that same reason, among others. But that whole being able to neutralize some of those big power attributes of some people, with really good solid technique and leverage, that's the core principle of jiu-jitsu. So I can certainly relate to you there. Coming from a background in some of the stand-up and hard style karate and jeet kune do, different things like that. But jiu-jitsu, there's that beauty in it that you flow with it and you use that technique and doesn't matter if they're bigger or stronger. If you're better with the technique, you got it. So
absolutely.
All right. So how long have you? When did you get into? Well, you said you got introduced to the jiu-jitsu while you were in Atlanta. When did it really come forward and you decided that you were going to concentrate a lot more on your jiu-jitsu? And how did you get introduced to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu?
Oh, okay.
Or
Well,
the Gracies themselves.
absolutely. I always did martial arts, like, again, as a way to stay fit and at the same time learn something new. And I never actually even fathomed being an instructor. I was working in the computer industry. I was kind of like a techie guy, working for a couple of high-tech firms in Atlanta, and of course training, as much as I could. Sometimes I'll travel and I couldn't do it. When I come back, I will do it for as many days as I can. In 1998 is when Eddie Camden brought jiu-jitsu into his school, and that was my introduction. It was kind of like, it was a little bit hard back then. It was a little more competitive. It was more, for MMA reasons. So therefore, the approach to training was a little bit, do or die. It's kind of like become a shark inside the shark tank.
Yeah.
So I kept on going in there, and I wish the keep it playful movement was there then, but it wasn't. But in 2004, I think 2004, 2005, Grandmaster Elio Gracie made a stop in Atlanta, and that was to sign his book, The Master Text. And I always hear about Grandmaster Elio Gracie, and I say, well, how good could he be? He's an older guy. He can only do so much. Yes, I know he was a legend back in the day, but come on, he's 92 years old now, right?
Right.
Until I saw him for real, just moving along the mat, and his spirit, not just the techniques, but the way he carried himself. He's like, wow, this guy is definitely unique. And it also made me feel like I can do this. Because at the time I got introduced to jiu-jitsu, I was already into my late 30s. And I was playing around jiu-jitsu with a lot of guys who are much younger, much faster, much more athletic than me. And to see someone like Grandmaster Elio was like, wow, it was an inspiration to me to just keep on doing it. I was fortunate enough to kind of like ask a few questions and talk to Horion as well, and see, at that time, here in Henner, Hallie was a purple belt at the time, and he was there as well. And just to see, it's like, wow, okay, I think I can do this if I take my time and try to do it right. So that was my introduction to the Gracie family back in 2004, 2005. From there, my approach of jiu-jitsu kind of like changed a little bit, knowing that I didn't have to push those bigger and stronger guys as much as they pushed me. But it wasn't until 2008 when the Gracies opened up the concept of certified training centers and certified instructors that I thought, wow, this is what I was looking for. A way to have direct contact with the Gracie family and basically being trained directly under them so I can get the message unfiltered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that opened up things for a lot of people, for sure. And if I'm not mistaken, the first time I met you was out at the Academy, probably about 2011 or so.
Yes, I go back there every year, of course. I try to make it for every ICP. So that will be the last weekend in January and the last weekend in July, and I'll be there again in July. I was there last January. And it's a way to kind of refresh, you know. I stay there for a minimum of, you know, a week to 10 days, usually 2 weeks. First week is really training for myself before the ICP comes in. So I attend every class I can, privates, whatever. And then just to listen to what the new instructors have to go through is a way to remind me what, if I'm not doing it, what I should be doing.
Right. That's great. So just a reminder, a kind of a reset, if you will. Well, not necessarily a reset, but just a time to kind of renew and get your own training in, but see the new blood coming in and remembering how it was for you.
For sure, absolutely.
All right. So let me ask you one thing real quick about the area you live in. I know a few years ago a big division of the Special Forces moved out of Fort Bragg down to the Eglin Air Force Base area there in the Panhandle. Did that? What was that like for you? Did you see any kind of change? Did you get a lot of people from that move, or did it not affect you at all?
It affected me a little bit. The
A little
Army
bit.
7th, yeah, the Army 7th Group did come over, and they are closer to Crestview, which is north
Yeah.
of Fort Walton area, and you know there are a couple of schools that have opened around the base, I think, to take advantage of that. Uh,
Gotcha.
yes, but what I have gotten is that a lot of the high-level officers, uh, you know, I guess because they, you know, it's more financially feasible for them, they're actually closer to the beach. So they don't live up there; they live in the Destin area, Santa
Gotcha.
Rosa Beach, Fort Walton. So what I do get, I get some of those guys, and I also get some of their children. So I have actually more children from the Army than actual Army people
Ah.
that I train in the bulletproof program. And then I got a couple of guys that do very special things that come and go, you know, every 2 months here or there. So that
Sure.
is always pretty interesting. And it's not just the Army 7th Group. We also have Herbert Field and the Air Force Special Forces Central Command is here as well.
Okay.
So, and last but not least, even though they're about 50 miles away, I do have a couple of guys that come from Panama City, where there is a Navy training center there. So
Mhm.
some of the Navy guys that have been exposed to Jiu-Jitsu actually make the trip over 50 miles one way to come and train with us. So,
Wow. Nice.
yeah, yes.
Very nice. Okay. Well, great. Well, when talking about kids or families, tell us about. Do you have any? Well, tell us about your family. And do any of your family do jujitsu?
Yeah, well, I have two sons. Both are in their early 20s. They live in Pittsburgh. They used to train when they were little, but now they're, you know, they're a little bit bigger, college, family, kids. They don't train as, you know, anymore as much. So in a way, I kind of think that they're kind of, you know, finding out their way.
Okay.
Uh, as for my wife, she's a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu blue belt.
Nice.
And so she's been training for quite some time. She did have to stop a little bit due to travel, but she just retired. So after some decompression time, I hope that she comes back to train. But you know, really, it's totally up to her. So, like you
Sure.
like to say,
Absolutely.
there is no wrong, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
So, Carlos, what's been the most interesting or exciting thing for you so far about studying and practicing and teaching Gracie Jiu-Jitsu?
I tell you what is really interesting. It really gives you an insight on people, on students. I think students come here and pay a lot of attention to techniques and things to learn about jiu-jitsu, and I pay a lot of attention to them, how they are as people, and I like to play a game with myself to figure out, you know, who's going to stick around, who's going to be good, who's going to leave for a while, and it's very interesting. You know, I kind of like, it's hard to figure them out right away, but
Right.
if I have to say anything, I think the one thing that you need the most is perseverance. I see a lot of people, and when they get really, really excited, come here and train every single day for 3, 4, 5 months, and then they're gone.
Yeah. Mm.
And then you got the guys that come here twice a week, and they have a balanced life. And I guess that's what it comes down to. You know, if you're balanced, you're gonna be here for a while. I got students that
Wow.
have been here 7, 8 years, So and they're still pretty excited to come that 2-3 times a week, and they are by far my most advanced students. So
Wow.
yeah, the turtle
That's a
wins the
great
race on
point.
that one.
Yeah, that's a great point because there's so many people that just whimsically get excited about something and it's like all or nothing. They rush forward and start doing it, and that's all they want to do. But like you said, there's no balance, and you got to have that balance in your life to keep you in check and keep you, centered. So it's really interesting your observations there. How successful would you say you are at predicting after a short amount of time who's going to stay?
Wow. Now, I would say that I probably slightly over 50%. I would say I'm like 60%. People do surprise me.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that have all the reasons why not to train. Like, for example, I got one guy here who is one of my oldest students uh, with some medical conditions where he really, if he said, I can't train because of this, I would be like, wow, I totally understand. And yet, he's one of the most dedicated students I have. So it's kind of like he's the one that
Yeah.
shows up, private lessons, group classes, rolling, you name it, he's there. So while the athletic types, the ones that have no excuses, very little responsibilities, I'm like, wow, these guys can train all the time and, they're distracted, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's there's a book called Mastery that I'm a big fan of, and it describes certain types of or categories of people that start any endeavor. In fact, it uses tennis as the analogy, but one of the categories is the dabbler, and that's what it reminds me of, where people get real excited about part, but they'll just kind of dabble in it for a little bit, but not really get fully committed. And once the newness wears off, they're on to dabble into something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, you just reminded me of something that my parents did with me when I was growing up. Uh, like any kid, I wanted to do everything. Play baseball, soccer, swim, rugby, tennis, whatever. And they all and my parents were kind of like low middle income, so they couldn't afford everything. So
Right.
they will make an agreement with me and say, okay, Carlos, you can choose one where that's the one that we're going to buy you the equipment. We will give you a couple of classes, private sessions or whatever, so you could be reasonably good at that. But you have to commit to it for one full year.
Wow.
All the other, all the other sports are hobbies. Therefore, if you can make it, great. If you can't, that's fine. And there's no expectations. You're just going to dabble in those. But that one, that's the one that you're going to commit to. And then at the end of the year, you can reevaluate. And if you want to choose something else, then do it. And that was good for me because at least eventually at that time I settled onto tennis. And I see so many kids right now kind of like music lessons, tennis lessons, martial arts, this, and they're never good at anything.
Yeah, that's so
And
true.
yeah, and then I think it's kind of like I think the parents feel that they are introducing the kid to everything, so they're doing their best, but the kid is not good at anything, so he's disillusioned and he gives up. So
That's true. That's true. And yeah, to give parents credit, I'm sure that they have great intentions and want to expose their kids to as much as possible to see what they'll kind of take to or whatnot. But it does kind of bring up a situation where the whole expression "jack of all trades, master at none," which I know they're still kids, but I really like that story you just told and how your parents approached it because it ensured from the start that you're going to have to pick something and commit to it and be dedicated for at least a year above all the other things and see kind of where it takes you. So that was really cool.
yeah, and I like everything else, I think there's always a honeymoon phase to anything that you do, and then
Right.
you realize it's not as easy as you thought it was. But if you apply yourself, you could be reasonably good at it. And I think that 1 year at least it let me know that hey, work at this and you will get a certain level of proficiency, and eventually you will find something that you love working hard for it. But
That's true.
sometimes we have to do things that we don't particularly like that much. Maybe after a while, at least have to stick to it for 1 year. So
And the perseverance is a big thing. I mean that certainly got you going, with the notion of perseverance and persevering through kind of the rough times, or at least even when things aren't as fun for a while because, like you said, there's always that honeymoon phase, and no matter what you start, but a lot of people think it's going to be with their jiu-jitsu journey. It's going to be get it quick, make great progress, and it goes quick. And when they find out jiu-jitsu, especially, doesn't lend itself to that. There's no quick routes to getting through and making rank and going forward. You've got to be on the long path, and you've got to persevere. So there'll be a lot of ups and downs and times where you're like, why am I doing this? But the people that persevere are really, they get the real essence of and the joy of what it's all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. What about your time off the mat, Carlos? What do you have another favorite activity or anything you do when you're not training jiu-jitsu and martial arts?
Wow. you know, it, the last couple of years, especially when I got closer to black belt and eventually having it, started to come to this realization that when you say, "Oh, jiu-jitsu is not a martial art; it's a lifestyle for me," then when you start doing things outside of the mat and outside of jiu-jitsu, you're like, I'm doing this because I want to be better at jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
So you are still doing it for jiu-jitsu, even though you're not wearing a gi. So, and you're not on the mat. So what do I like to do on the outside? I love running. I love running in the heat, really hot. And the reason for that is because it's like, man, when the biggest, heaviest student of mine is on top of me, I'm like, this is bad, but not as bad as running in the heat.
Oh, wow. That's good, man. That's really good.
Or if you go paddleboarding, which just a hobby of mine here, it's kind of like, wow, this requires a great base, a great sense of balance. This will help my jiu-jitsu, So yeah, maybe a little obsession, maybe, but I think that when you start like choosing anything, it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu. If you choose anything as a lifestyle, you start seeing the correlation between what you're doing and that love for what you have, whatever that may be. So the things that I do is, like I said, running. I like running in the heat. A lot of water activities, being here in the Destin area. And because I was a techie back then, I like to introduce technology into whatever I do. So I'm a big believer into training with a heart monitor because I train alone. So it's kind of like that's my companion. My heart is my companion.
Wow. Well stated, man. That's really great. I like what you said about even though you're not jiu-jitsu, it kind of carries over into all your other activities and what you do. I find that to be true for myself too, with the exception of running. I've done some running, and I try to avoid the heat like the plague. but I like what you said about it, and I just I may try to do the times I have to do it in the heat. I'm gonna think of it like that. I think that'll be a good way to frame it.
Yeah, I mean, like when I go running, I don't think about the time. I don't think about how fast I'm doing a mile or whatever. I really think more about how do I feel then? How am I breathing? And that's the same thing that kind of carries over to the mat. So I'm tired. I want to give up right now and go to walking, but you know what? Let me go to that 2 more, electric poles down.
Right.
So it'll be like the last 30 seconds that you need to do whatever you need to do on the mat. So it's kind of funny. I play games with myself in my mind that way. And, yeah, that's running to me is really like a lot of people say, wow, you're really so much into running. Have you ever like done any race of any kind? I'm like, no, never. I've never done it. No 5Ks, no 10Ks, no nothing. But, I will run, when I run, I usually say, okay, it's a class. A class is 1 hour. Okay, I'm going to run for an hour. And guess what? I'm going to go with so many people. Therefore, these are the intervals that I'm doing, and so on. So I play games in my head with that.
That's really cool. I really like that. Very cool. I've never heard anybody describe their running in that way, and I think that's pretty awesome. So thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
By the way, I got to just shift gears for a minute and tell you about checked out your new website and the pictures on the beach of you kind of rolling or doing jiu-jitsu on the beach are really, really cool. Love those.
Yes,
Very nice.
they're cool. He was
Yeah.
taken by one of my students, and he was like, "Come on, sunset's coming down. We're gonna do this in like 5 minutes or
Yeah.
less."
Well, what's cool is you got some of them right at sunset, and that was really great.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So, if you could train Carlos with one person, living or deceased, who would that be?
Wow. So many great guys over there. Uh, I'm gonna answer the living. I'm gonna answer the person who's not here. So
Okay.
the living is, man. I have them here in Henner, and the reason for that is that I've trained with all these, with other guys. I've trained with Hickson, I've trained with Hoyes, and I will not say no to training with any one of them in the future. But I think that when I train with Theon and Henner, uh, since we are since I'm walking their curriculum and their path, I feel that what I get from the time I spend with them is so much more productive for me. So, if I'm going to spend an hour training with a super advanced person, he's going to be one of those two.
Okay.
Um, as far as the person who's not here, Grandmaster Elio Gracie. Just because when I met him back in the day, he was more of an inspiration to me than anything else. So he's the reason why I'm training right now. And my eyes are so different than when I met him then.
Yeah.
I have what I call jujitsu eyes. Like when I see people do jujitsu, it's so different than that long ago.
Wow.
So I feel I can learn so much more from him, and we can maybe like talk a little bit more in depth into things that I wasn't even capable of because of my knowledge back then.
Mm. Well, it sounds like even with that limited knowledge and way back then, he had a profound impact on you, and I can certainly appreciate you wishing you could go back now with, as you call it, your jiu-jitsu eyes and connect and have that experience again. But well, it sounds like you've had an opportunity to train with a lot of great jiu-jitsu masters, for sure. And now what's interesting is there are a lot of people who are starting to look at you in that light, people that see your knowledge and appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and to train with you and get all that knowledge and insight that you have. So it's kind of come full circle in a lot of ways in your journey.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yeah, I think what is interesting for what people tell me is kind of like, wow, you are not a person that grew up to be a fighter. You're not a person that was in martial arts to be an instructor your entire life. You were doing other things, but yet we can see the love of teaching and the love of martial arts in general. And just understand even the striking arts that I did in the past and how they all fit into the martial arts world. Um, is kind of like I give a different perspective for the everyday guy, not the wannabe UFC fighter, but the guy that wants to have more of a balanced life.
Right.
So absolutely.
Absolutely. So tell me about your experience with the Gracie diet. Do you follow that or any other nutritional program regularly, Carlos?
Yes, Gracie diet. I follow it. Am I a black belt at it? No. This to me was like, always dabble in the Gracie diet. And then when I got my black belt, I'm like, okay, you can't dabble anymore. It is your responsibility, and duty to
Right,
become
right.
a black belt in the Gracie diet. So, to me, this is part of my learning. So I think, you know, Taige and I are kind of like in the same boat. We both feel like purple belts at the diet. And what Grandmaster Horn has told us is kind of like, the diet itself is a journey. Unfortunately for us, it wasn't like our first lesson, like some of the members of the Gracie family get diet first, jiu-jitsu later.
Right.
Uh, but that's okay. We just doing it the other way: jiu-jitsu first, diet, later. But I do remember one thing that Horian told me is that if you want to be really good at jiu-jitsu, you want to be really good at the diet. And that is so deep, both from just plain nutrition and physical to the discipline aspects that the diet teaches you. So yeah, that is that is my next step, and that's my journey right now.
Absolutely. So the journey continues.
Absolutely.
Well, and I appreciate what you said about so many of us think that you have to be instant black belt in the Gracie diet if you're gonna do it. It's kind of like all or nothing, and want to be perfect at it. But as you and Ty and other people have mentioned, and speaking of with Horion's words, that it is a process and it is a journey, and as long as you're trying to do well and better yourself and grow in that path, great. You don't have to have it all in place or all perfect or all solved at one time, but continue the journey and keep advancing forward. So great.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you think about somebody who comes in to train jiu-jitsu for the first time, and then say, "I'm going to be perfect at this. I'm going to submit everyone. I want to be a black belt. I'll never be defeated." How long will they last?
Not very.
No,
Not very.
exactly. So why do we do that about the diet? You know what?
Right.
So that was the way Jorge can explain to me. It's kind of like it's just like jiu-jitsu. You will fail many, many, many times, but as long as you what? As long as there are lessons. As long as there are lessons, just in the same way you get submitted and you learn not to put your hand there, not to do this, not to do that, and get better, then your diet will get better as well. So yes, people should not look at the diet as like I do it or I don't do it. They should look at it as like a journey, and then say, right now I need to do this. I need to get started, so I'm going to try to eat 4.5 hours apart. And you master that basic concept, and then you move
Right.
on to the combinations, and you kind of like, in a very with that methodology, you will eventually get there. But if we plan to be black belts, we won't last on the mat, and we won't last on any diet. So
Gotcha. So in it for the long haul, and don't lose sight of the long journey, the big picture, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
All right, great. All right. Do you have a favorite quote or motto that inspires you or that you live by?
Uh, yes. Yes. I have some, people, who been very influential in my life to kind of like tell me little quotes. So I'm surrounded by tons of little quotes. I don't have any particular one.
Okay.
But I tell you a couple that really stick to me. One of them was my dad, that he'll always tell me something that never made sense till later. He will say, "Work hard, play hard, or play hard, work hard." And that didn't make sense to me at all until way later when he was trying to explain to me, you go to college, you learn, you work hard, you eventually be able to play. So right now I'm playing because uh, owning a martial arts school and teaching jiu-jitsu is life after life for me. It's a career after a career.
Right.
So I work hard in other aspects and other things of my life. So now I get to play hard doing jiu-jitsu. The one that really applied to the way my jiu-jitsu progressed, especially in the last 5 years, is something that Hiron told me in my very first private session back in 2008. Um, he said, "You're a purple belt. You've been training for quite some time. Uh, you can become a black belt in 3 years or the next 15 years. Your progression is up to you." And then, of course, he went on, to give me some advice about how to train, especially being remote and away and not being surrounded by killer black belts everywhere. So that saying, your jiu-jitsu progression is up to you, is like, wow, don't just step on the mat and say, okay, I'm here, let's do, the two moves of the day. Have a purpose, saying, I am going to work at this. And that really, really changed everything. It's kind of like, okay, defense only. Let everybody do everything to you. Tap 1,000 times. Study them. That to me was huge. That was, I mean, he was formulating the playful movement. He didn't quite have a name yet, but he was already doing
Right.
it. So that to me is huge.
Wow. That was a big shift, huh?
Yes, big time.
Yeah.
And it still holds true. The progression of how my jiu-jitsu is up to me because I get to train with them 3-4 times a year, a couple of weeks at a time each time. But then what about the rest of the time?
Right.
So the rest of the time is I'm here surrounded with my students, and I have to train with them in such a way that not only is it beneficial for them, but it's also beneficial for me. So yes, this is is my teaching, but also my training environment, and that's kind of like it's kind of tricky, but it definitely could be done.
Absolutely. Well, keep up the good work. You're doing it well. So the last question, Carlos, is kind of a two-part. What's the most important thing or aspect of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to you? And you might have already just answered it with that. But so, what's the most important thing or aspect of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to you? And if you could go back and speak with white belt Carlos, what advice would you have for him?
Wow. Yes. The advice I would have for white belt Carlos, really for anyone, is kind of like you should write certain things down that you might not remember later that you're going to need to keep on going with this. And what I mean by that is that I like to tell my students, always remember why you started training. Write it down because you're going to forget sometime and you need to know that. Ask yourself why you're training now. And ask also yourself, what would you like to be in 5 years? Those three questions are constantly, once every 6 months, once a year, beginning of the new year, it should be revisited. And that's what's going to keep you, in the journey. Because a lot of people forget why they started. They just remember that they just came training last night and they got submitted 10 times,
That's so true.
Yeah, as compared to, yes, there are lessons in these submissions and the whole aspect of winning or losing, which is not really losing, it's more learning. But why did you start training to begin with? Because I think when people walk in there for the first time training jiu-jitsu, I can see how, their passion and their love. Oh, I'm starting something new. You shouldn't lose that spark. You should feel like that all the time. So.
Great advice. Great advice, because if more people would be able to maintain that focus, and asking those questions that you just said are ways to maintain that focus on what it is that brought you in and had you start that journey, and then asking periodically, why are you doing it now and where do you want to be? It gives the mind direction and keeps that motivation high, keeps it clear. So excellent questions, great advice. So I just want to, well, before I close, anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to share with us about your journey, about jiu-jitsu, or about anything?
Yeah, I think in the journey of jiu-jitsu and the journey of life, things change, and we shouldn't try to be so rigid. We should try to adjust as life adjusts. I have had students who start training when they were single. Now they're married. Now they're expecting children. And it's kind of like, how do you handle all the life changes and still stay on the path? You cannot be training 5 days a week like you would when you were single. By the same token, it would be a shame to kind of give up everything that you have worked on, because you could be a great example to your children or your spouse or whatever to keep on doing something that you love with a passion, even if you can only do it 1-2 days a week.
Absolutely.
So, part of the self-discovery is to say, wow, I didn't realize this is changing. Therefore, I'm going to change to adapt to it as well. Just like you will change to adapt to a different opponent, a light, fast, a slow but very heavy opponent. You have to change your jiu-jitsu, so it has to be adaptable.
Absolutely.
So you shouldn't say, this is what I'm going to do and this is the way I'm going to do it and that's it. There's no deviation. If you do that, you will eventually give up. So that to me would be like my closing words, just to make sure that you change and you adapt, like your jiu-jitsu should adapt.
That's great, and a great way to kind of put it back together, the life and the whole self-discovery, with the perseverance and with the flexibility to roll with it and however it takes you, but connecting to the life and with the jiu-jitsu on and off the mat. The lessons are there. Challenges will be there, but if you stay the path, be flexible, and move forward, you'll have a great journey.
Absolutely.
Well, man, I really appreciate you taking time and sharing your life with us and your all the insights that you have. I really enjoyed it, and you are truly an inspiration. You're someone who really is walking their jiu-jitsu journey. You know, walking the talk, walking the walk, and walking the talk, so to speak. So, my hats off to you, and much respect, man.
Thank you, Marty. And I think this podcast is great. So we get to know each other a little bit more. I'm actually enjoying listening to my other peers, kind of the little things that I didn't know about them. Even, I know them, but now I know them a little more. So this podcast has been great for me to get to know, my jiu-jitsu family more. So that's awesome.
Well, awesome.
Up the good work.
I appreciate that feedback because that has been my desire, to have everybody in the Gracie communities get to know more about each other and just feel more of a sense of connection. So appreciate the feedback.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, my friend. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, see you on the mat.
All right. Bye.
This is Eric Holland from the Gracie CTC in Annapolis, Maryland, and this is the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. It's my favorite quote by Muhammad Ali out of a lifetime of great quotes. And I think about how that applies to everything that we do. If you're talking about your own personal development, everything that you come up against, every obstacle that you come up against is there to teach you something. And if your gut reaction is to think that it's impossible or it's out of your reach or anything like that, you'll never know, how far you can go with that. There's another quote by Vince Lombardi that says that we'll chase perfection, and in the pursuit of perfection, we'll catch excellence. And I think those two go together really well because even if you think something's impossible, if you still try and attain that goal or reach that objective, maybe in the attempt, you'll learn something new about yourself, you'll improve yourself, and you'll evolve personally, even if you never reach the goal. So impossible is not a fact; it's an opinion. Should be a way of life.
Okay, that's going to wrap up episode 11 of the show. Special thanks to Carlos Diaz and Eric Holland. 1 week from today, I'll be on a plane heading down to Destin, Florida for the Gracie Immersion Camp. I hope to see a lot of my jiu-jitsu brothers and sisters down there as well. Again, don't forget to like us on Facebook and leave some feedback either on the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com or on iTunes, and go ahead and rate the show on iTunes. Hope you're enjoying the show. Always welcome your feedback. This is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.